I don't need really to introduce Scott Ritter to you. He's a very frequent guest of ours because, well, he's the best. He's the master. He's the master of war. He's the master of the politics of war. But he's also, of course, an American patriot who's dismayed by the scenes he's watching in his own country, about which I'm going to ask him first. Scott Ritter, former Marine Corps intelligence officer and United Nations weapons inspector. Welcome back. Can we start at home, if you don't mind? I characterized in my monologue this ice as a kind of storm association, the SA, the Brownshirts, the private army of the dictator. And it seems to me that Caligula is metamorphosing under our eyes. We can see it in real time, into somebody who thinks, at least, that he's no longer the president of the United States, a constitutional republic, but a dictator in Trumpland. How does it all look to you?
Well, sadly, what you're saying, unfortunately, rings true. It's not that the current president of the United States thinks he's a dictator. He says he's a dictator. And he seems to be okay with this. He is a man who has walked away from any notion of legal constraints on what he can do as president. And in the United States, these legal constraints are defined by the Constitution of the United States and the laws that are derived thereof. He has basically said that law no longer matters to him. The only thing that matters is his own sense of personal morality. And we don't need to go too far down that path to understand that that's problematic prima facie. Congress, this isn't something that one man can simply do in America. I mean, we have to face the sad reality in the United States that this experiment we call the constitutional republic is either on its deathbed or has already passed, and we just have yet to bury the body. Congress, mandated by the Constitution to hold executive power in check, is failing to do just that. And the judiciary, which likewise is there to hold executive and legislative power in check because of the rule of law, has been completely undermined by, its unwillingness or inability to challenge executive authority. I mean, this dates back to, the time of Andrew Jackson, when he famously told the Supreme Court, you passed a law, now enforce it. But that's, the idea of a constitutional republic is that we don't need to have an army with the judiciary capable of standing up to the army of the executive. All law enforcement and military in the United States are supposed to adhere to the rule of law set forth by the Constitution. Indeed, they all take an oath, the same oath that those who hold office to uphold and defend this Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But the sad state of affairs in America today is, I will guarantee you that fully 90% of the people that take that oath have no clue what the Constitution is. Therefore, the oath is meaningless because they're giving an oath to something that doesn't exist in their mind. The Constitution must reside in the heart of every American if it is going to mean something. And that heart must pump blood infused with constitutional loyalty into the brain of Americans. But Americans don't think constitutionally. We have today in the United States, people who believe that I voted for this. They say this over and over again. This is what I voted for when we speak of ICE in the streets, these stormtroopers, as you rightfully say. My God, in America today, to have men wearing military uniforms, seizing control of the streets, being authorized by their executive leaders to violate the Fourth Amendment of the United States willy-nilly, just to barge into the homes of American citizens without a proper warrant from the judiciary, and the judiciary doing nothing about it, and Congress doing nothing about it, and frankly speaking, the American people doing nothing about it, because this constitutional republic doesn't live unless the people are willing to defend it, and the people are ignorant of that which they are willing to defend. So it's all too easy for this egomaniac to seize dictatorial power, because he has seized dictatorial power, and he now has an army of militarized law enforcement occupying American cities in regions of the country that are not politically loyal to him. And I fear for what will transpire come November in the midterm elections, when he turns this army into an occupation force designed to suppress the democratic will of the American people. We are in a lot of trouble in America today, and most Americans are simply ignorant of it because, again, you can't defend that which you do not understand. And for Americans to defend the Constitution, they would not only have to read the Constitution, but live the Constitution. And we are not doing that in this country today.
Well, I think that answer will travel far and wide and last a perfect encapsulation, if I may say so, of the current situation. But you say the people are not doing anything about it. Well, they are in Minneapolis. From what I can see, the people of Minneapolis are risen. And this very evening, these stormtroopers are being assailed and attacked. I mean, the worm eventually turns, doesn't it, Scott? When you are wreaking havoc in communities, and it's extraordinary that the two people they've murdered in the last days were both American citizens, both white American citizens, both wholesome American family people, and this latest man was an ICU nurse in the Veteran Affairs Hospital. And he was carrying a weapon that he was fully entitled to carry. And he concealed it as he was fully entitled to do, indeed required to do. He never pulled a gun. The gun was taken from his holster, and then they murdered him. It's as clear a case of cold-blooded murder as I've ever seen on camera.
No, George, you're 100% correct. I mean, this is an extraordinarily sad day. I mean, it was sad when they killed a 37-year-old mother whose sole crime was trying to survive the assault being waged on her by ICE officers who were reaching into her vehicles, illegally so, and she was trying to escape, and they murdered her. They killed her. She wasn't gunning after anybody, seeking to assault anybody. And anybody who says that is, frankly speaking, I have to be careful what I say, but they're not in tune with the facts. They're straight up lying, but it's more than lying, George. There's a mental illness that's afflicted the American people, and it's the mental illness of power. And the need, we've seen it, how we operate overseas. I've been very critical of this, how, people who could be law-abiding Americans here can go to Iraq and shoot a man for crossing the street, or shooting a farmer for approaching their checkpoint, or just barging into a home and slaughtering a family and walk away and think nothing of it. It's an indifference to humanity. It's an indifference to human life that exists as in the way America interfaces the world, because it's us versus them. But now in America, we've taken that same mindset of us versus them, and we have Americans versus Americans. And frankly speaking, we don't have Americans versus Americans, because the Americans doing the assaulting aren't Americans, because you can't be an American unless you are loyal to the constitutional republic. And so we have non-Americans, these citizen aliens, so to speak, who are hunting down the law-abiding Americans, citizens, and murdering them in the streets. Yes, I applaud anybody who resists this unlawful use of authority, but I fear because, I used to believe that those who took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution would never take arms against law-abiding American citizens, that is a red line that could never be crossed. I am not certain of that today, because more and more I am seeing that the people who put on the uniform, whether it's a law enforcement uniform or an American military uniform with the flag of the United States of America on their shoulders, that flag doesn't mean the same thing to them as it means to real Americans, people who love their country, who believe in the Constitution. That flag has become a symbol of oppression, of authority, of brutality. That it's an empowerment to commit these acts. And I fear for the citizens of Minneapolis, because if the brutal power of federal authority is unleashed to its full extent, it will be a very, very bloody day. And woe be it for the nation when that happens.
Yeah, it could be Kent State exponentially expanded. Isn't all of this the reason why Americans were given the constitutional right to bear arms, to defend themselves against an oppressive and expansionist, dictatorial federal government?
George, here's where I need to be careful. And you know why I need to be careful. Because every word I say is being monitored by this very same federal government. I believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. Therefore, I brook no illegal challenge to constitutional rule. And therefore, I would never embrace any notion of violent opposition to the Constitution of the United States. But when the Constitution ceases to exist and the government that is carrying out its actions is so far removed from constitutional authority that it ceases to be recognizable as a government, one can only fear what the consequences of that could be. The Second Amendment gives every American a right to bear arms, and it is derived from the necessity of an armed citizenry to prevent tyranny from being lorded over them by governments that have lost faith with the people. And if you look at what happened in Minneapolis, one can only say that the government has lost faith with the people. And again, the consequences of that are horrifying. I believe in nonviolent resistance to government. I believe that freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and the kind of, opposition that Martin Luther King was famous for leading in the streets of America. Civil disobedience is the way forward. I believe in the potential of the American people to rally to the cause of the Constitution and elect people to represent them in higher office who believe in the same values. This is what I believe in, and this is what I'm going to fight for, and this is how I will fight. But I will not sit here and pretend that other people may view the situation in the United States far differently and may believe that the Second Amendment is their last refuge of defense.
Let's turn to the international scene then, Scott, because if America is violent at home, it's far more violent abroad. And I was making the point in my monologue that all of the military pieces are now in place for much speculated upon new assault on Iran. Certainly the Iranians believe that. Your friend and mine, the great Professor Marandi, believes it. And the closing of the airspace, airlines cancelling flights to the areas that would be immediately affected, even Dubai. The flights were cancelled yesterday. The fear is that Trump, perhaps to again perform the look over there maneuver, is about to launch a new war. Do you think he is?
Sadly, I do believe he is. I was not someone who believed that he was going to attack in this last go around because the pieces weren't there. It was clear that if he did attack when people were suspecting in the aftermath of the riots, that the Iranians had the unmatched ability to annihilate the American forces in the region and inflict horrific harm on Israel. The Israelis, from what I can tell, have made it clear to the United States that they're willing to absorb up to 700 Iranian ballistic missiles. And that's a price they're willing to pay if, at the end of this exchange of military power, there is no Iranian regime, that the United States and Israel are successful in removing the Iranian regime from power. And we need to understand this, that the United States is not seeking to do another slap on the wrist or military demonstration. That if the United States participates in military action against Iran, it will be of an existential nature, meaning we are seeking regime change in Iran. The Iranians must know this, which means there can be no checks on their response. And they must immediately respond in a way that is not only devastating to American military and Israeli infrastructure, but the energy security structure of the entire Middle East. This can no longer be theoretical. It must be real. It must be actualized. And it has to be instantaneous. I think too many people in the world today have become accustomed to conflict in the Middle East being spectacular on the video screens of their television or their cell phones or wherever they watch their news, but it doesn't impact their day-to-day lives. I fear that this next conflict will have a tremendous negative impact on the entire world because it will be disruptive of that which fuels the entire world, the energy that comes from the Middle East. It will be destructive to global markets, fragile economies, including the one here in the United States that lack resilience, will collapse or will be greatly damaged. And people will wake up. For all the people out there who believe that a Shah would be better than an Ayatollah, understand that this is not the case. The Iranian people, first of all, do not want a Shah. The majority of the Iranian people, while they recognize that their current government has policies that need to be improved on, are supportive of this democracy that is the Islamic Republic. Again, people need to stop being wedded to their ignorance. This is not a dictatorship of Ayatollahs. This is a functioning, thriving democracy where people regularly empower elected officials in the parliament and in the presidency. They also elect people who monitor the theocracy, the assembly of experts. Do your homework, people. Google it, find out what it is, and find out how they're elected. The people elect the assembly of experts, and the assembly of experts monitors the supreme leader. So he's not a supreme leader. There's democratic checks and balances on everybody in Iran, and it functions in a way that is responsive to the needs of the people. Look at the videos coming out of Tehran in the malls. How many hijabs did you see in the malls? Not too many. Many women are wearing their hair freed from the hijab. Why? Because according to the Iranian president, who I had the honor and privilege of speaking to last September, he said, we listened to the people. We recognize there must be changes in policy. That is a government responsive to the needs of the people. Let it alone. Let them live in peace. Let them do what they need to do to thrive, to prosper, just like all of us. But instead, we've allowed our ignorance about Iran to manifest itself so that anything negative said about Iran is believed at face value. And now governments filled in power by the ignorance of their respective populations to carry out a conflict that is going to be not just disruptive to the world economy, but destructive to the world economy.
Turning then lastly, and I'm grateful for your time as always, to the most destructive of the many destructive currents that are loose in the world, that in the Ukraine. Now, on one level, talks seem to have quickened, leading, in my heart at least, to a renewed optimism that this can be resolved without having to be fought all the way to Kiev. Are you optimistic about how things are on that track?
Sadly, George, I don't share your optimism. Yes, I see these negotiations taking place, but, Karen Knissel, she's the former Austrian foreign minister who currently resides in St. Petersburg, where she heads something called the Gorky Institute. She is a specialist in foreign affairs. She has said something over and over again, and I agree with her. Whenever you hear anybody talking about a deal, that's the language of gangsters. That's the language of thugs. Real governments don't make deals. Real governments sign treaties. Real governments have agreements that are based in writing. what we're seeing right now is an American rush to a deal. And fortunately, the Russians are pushing back. They don't want to deal. The Russians have said, going back to December of 2021, when they put forward draft treaties about a new European security framework, that all arrangements with the West must be in writing and must be treaty-based and must be binding and enforceable. So the Russians aren't looking for a deal. They're not gangsters. And so you have the Russians sitting down at the table, and again, we don't have all the details coming out of the United Arab Emirates, but what we are seeing is that the Russians are holding the Americans' feet to the fire for the agreement that was reached between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in Anchorage, Alaska, about the status of the Donbass. 100% Russian controlled, no foreign troops at all. And now you see that the deal makers in the United States are trying to go back on that. We're going to have a peacekeeper force. The Russians won't control all of it. And the Russians are, no, we're not cutting a deal with you. We're not doing that sort of thing. This is going to be an agreement in writing, a treaty. And until not just the United States, but Ukraine and Europe understand that this, because even Europe, this, George, look at Minsk. The Europeans never intended to implement Minsk. It was always a deal designed to buy time. The Ukrainians are the same way. They aren't looking for a lasting peace with Russia. They're looking for a pause in the conflict, during which time they can recover, rebuild, re-equip, retrain, and resume the war. The Russians are looking for a final solution to the problem, and I'm not using that in a Nazi Jew way. I'm using that in making sure that this war does not resurrect its ugly head. Russia's not looking for the destruction of Ukraine. They're looking for the pacification of Ukraine, and that will only happen with a treaty, with an agreement that is binding and long-lasting. It'll never happen with the kind of deal that the West has tried to cut in the United Arab Emirates.
Now, you and I are far from fans of Ted Cruz, but in actuality that was released this evening, I presume secretly recorded, Cruz was utterly damning of Marco Rubio and of Donald Trump, and he predicted that in November the Trump administration is going to lose control, not just of the House, but also of the Senate. And he says that Trump will be impeached every other week. It seems that you're in for a very, very turbulent time in U.S. politics.
I hope so. I hope we're in for a turbulent time. That means that the American people are fighting. That means we're struggling. That means we're not going to just allow ourselves to drown. We're going to kick and scream and struggle and wait and hope that for a rescue can only come from within. I pray that this president, who was given every opportunity to succeed but has only shown himself capable of embracing violence-fueled failure, I hope he is crushed at the polls. I have encouraged everybody to do anything but vote Republican in the fall, not because I support the Democrats, I don't, but because I don't support Republican dictatorship. I believe that this country needs to be paralyzed politically so the American people wake up to the necessity of refamiliarizing themselves with the Constitution, make this a constitutional republic. Good things can only come from struggle sometimes, and America needs to struggle. We need to have the kind of political struggle, peaceful political struggle. That's how we cure ourselves, not through violence, not through ICE occupying our cities, compelling Americans armed through the benefit of the Second Amendment to violently oppose. That's bad for America. That's the end of America. What we need is the kind of political paralysis that means that the political system is non-functioning and the American people start to elect better people into higher office to represent them, people who believe in the Constitution. So, yes, I would hope that after November, this president wakes up impeached every single day of the week for the rest of his term, that he is paralyzed, that his administration can't continue to run shambles, because that means checks and balances are in place. That means the Constitution is still alive. and that's a wonderful thing.
And Nouri al-Maliki is back. Did you ever see that coming? The Prime Minister of Iraq is the one the US removed. It's not going so well for them there. Well, Scott Ritter, I've kept you longer than you intended.
My bingo card makes no sense. When you take a look at what's happening, the bingo card I picked has none of that. So, hey.
Exactly. Well, I'm a Manchester United fan. We've just defeated Arsenal, having defeated Manchester City last week. Go figure. Scott Ritter, the one and only. Thanks for joining us.